Moving into 2023, we have high inflation, a looming global recession, massive layoffs incoming, and a gloomy uncertainty building up in the economy. In this context, it is crucial to be prepared for this incoming storm, and one must do is to take your fixed costs down. In this video, I'll tell you the 7 easiest, most effective, and highest leverage ways you can lower your expenses when living in Denmark without having to make neither big nor very uncomfortable sacrifices. If you're new here, my name is Mario and I am passionate about financial independence. In this channel, I help people living in Denmark to save money, invest well, and live an overall rich life. One is to own your house or apartment. Renting in Denmark can be borderline crazy expensive. It is, again, very expensive, especially in a city like Copenhagen, and especially if you want to have a full flat for yourself and your family. So unless you have a very good rent control deal, or public housing, and some people have that, so let's not discount that, but most people don't, you will be a lot better off owning your place versus renting out. So even with the highest interest rates in a long time that we see at the current moment, the running costs of owning your house are almost always lower than to have a rental. Okay, this might sound a bit complicated, but if you want to have more money in your pocket, this is the highest leverage way to get there. Now, you don't need to buy a house right here, right now. I just want to give you a bit of perspective here. I explained in this video over here that prices are falling and you might be okay waiting a little bit. But just know that at the end of the day, your biggest expense, or a biggest expense for most people, is housing. And if you fix housing, you'll fix down a lot of your fixed costs. 2 is to not own a car. I know I'll rub some feathers here, but please hold with me and hear me out. Denmark is one of the most expensive places in the world to buy and own a car. At the end of the day, you'll pay a vehicle registration fee over here that can reach over 150%. And by the way, that's before applying MOMS or the VAT, which will add a 25% on top of that. So in short, prices for cars here in Denmark are insane, especially at the nicer end of cars. And again, that's just to buy the car. When it comes to owning the car, you'll also have very expensive taxes, gas is very expensive here, insurance, and a lot more. At the end of the day, make having a car in Denmark a very pricey proposition. So my take here, and what I do myself, is that if your situation allows, just bike or use public transportation. In Copenhagen or in Aarhus as well perhaps, the options are excellent so long you don't live very far off in the suburbs. Again, you can even use one of those car sharing services when you need to, use a car. I have been now in Copenhagen myself for over 10 years and never once owned a car. I have a family, I have a wife, I have 2 kids, so it's not like I'm a single bachelor here. I know that if I plan my life deliberately and accordingly, I just don't need a car. I just bike everywhere. Now, I know this is not the same for everyone in Denmark, so if you live in Jutland, for instance, you likely really need a car. But in that case, the questions you should ask yourself is that if you have 2 cars in the house, do you really need 2 cars? If you have a huge SUV that pays a lot in taxes, would you be okay with a cheaper car or a car that is electric then pays taxes as well? If you're leasing a car, would you be better owning the car yourself or buying second hand instead of just paying the lease every single month? If you have a loan for the car, would you be better off paying that loan? Again, just food for thought, because I mentioned at the beginning, the highest expense for most people normally is housing. The second is transportation. If you fix housing and you fix transportation, I can of course give you a lot more tips on how to do this and that, but if you fix these 2 things, you'll go a really long way. So if you expected the simple, boring, use coupons or netto, food text and so on type of video, again, I'm sorry to disappoint. In this channel, we focus on the high leverage items. Again, even if they're hard not to crack. And again, as I said, housing and transportation are the 2 biggest ones. So make sure you at least look into that when it comes to planning your economy. If you want to hear more high impact strategies for financial independence and saving money, you can join me by clicking the subscribe button below. And now let's move on to the other points in this agenda, which are also out of the box, you could call. So let's go. Number 3 is to work in a big company. In Denmark, we have a blessing that the usual company, meaning corporations, but even the state, startups, will almost always provide their employees with lunch. Some would do breakfast, a gym membership, phone, internet connection, massage in some cases, discounts for restaurants, for the zoo, for Tivoli, and so on. A lot of perks. Not that, again, everyone can have this opportunity of getting all these perks, but a lot of them do. I remember when I moved to Denmark, I thought that every single company was like Google back in the day, that they would give you canteen and so on. Here it is very good. So for instance, I work with Maersk, which we have a fully equipped gym that's 300 krona a month. We have breakfast and lunch every day, which we still need to pay for, but it's still very accessible. Phone plan, discount in supermarkets, running club. And I know it's not just Maersk that offers this. I worked in Carlsberg before, I worked in a startup, and we always had similar setups. Now in Carlsberg we also got free beer, but that's a different story. But again, like I know friends working in companies that you never heard of before, so now we're not talking about this big fancy office, but they get a lot of these perks. If you sum all this up, all these perks, they mean serious money. I reckon that my family, because of my wife also works in corporate, saves a few thousand krona a month just because, again, we both have a job in a company. And again, hopefully that's something that you can also consider as well. Next up is to avoid bank fees. So every time, for example, that you use your Danish card abroad, that's your Dankort or your credit cards, you will pay hidden fees. So if you travel a lot, as I do, or you pay something in euros, for example, buying from Amazon Germany, you will pay 1.5% for each purchase in Europe, in euros that you do, on top of whatever you paid already. And the bank will not really tell you this, but that's what you actually pay in practice. And if you take any other currency that's not the euro, so we're talking about US dollars, you're talking about the rupees, the yen, you name it, you'll pay 2%. That means that every single time that you think you're spending 1,000 krona in a shop abroad, you'll actually spend 1,020 krona. This will not sound like a lot, but if you travel a lot, like as I do, and do it for a long time, you will save thousands of krona by removing these fees out of your life. And the way you do this is, for example, using an online bank like Revolut, but that's what I use myself for many years. But there's TransferWise, there's N26. There are a lot of services that will help you get rid of these ridiculous fees. The point here is that, just to give you a perspective, that there's a lot of things like this that you're paying that you actually shouldn't be paying. So when it comes to banks in Denmark, it's not only this, but then, for instance, you have fees to just have an account in the bank. Most of the times you can get rid of this. I don't pay it, for instance. Fees to pay bills or transfer money to friends in Denmark, that doesn't make any sense that you need to pay money for that. Fees to have a Dankort or to have a credit card, again, avoidable in a lot of cases. Fees to deposit money, withdraw money from your ATMs. Fees to use your Dankort for more than 30,000 krona in 1 month. So, for example, if you book a big trip with a whole family, you need to pay a fee extra. I mean, it's ridiculous. And a lot of these things are things you can negotiate. At the end of the day, banks will not let you go as a customer because you told them, hey, I don't want to pay the Dankort fee. And I made a whole course that's going to be linked down in the video description on how to negotiate with banks in Denmark. I have specifically the angle of buying a house here, but at the end of the day, a lot of the principles will also apply here. At the end of the day, a lot of these fees are removable, and if you remove all the fees for a long time, you'll save a lot of money. Next, use government free stuff. And there's a lot of free stuff in Denmark. So much so that I made a whole bit about free stuff that's gonna be linked over here. But in short, the big one is education. I studied my master's in Denmark and it was free, like real free. It's incredible. It's a blessing that as an expat or as a European here, you can come to Denmark and get your education for free. While most of the times, you also have the opportunity to work full time. I mean, this is high leverage, life-changing stuff. I mean, if you skip having to pay all these fees for the school and at the same time get money because you're studying, and in Denmark they pay you money, but at the end of the day you can work while you're studying, that's like basically like going ahead in life really fast. And that's just one example of the free things that you can get in Denmark. There's also free office space. So for example, if you're an entrepreneur or an aspiring entrepreneur, there are a lot of startups, even within universities, but at South as well, that will offer a free or almost free plan for people like you to join in. Sometimes you need to work on it, but then again, something that you can get. And that's even a concrete example of what I did when I had my second and very successful business. Was that, hey, I just got free office space for me and my team. And that's a blessing because then it let me had the opportunity to focus all my capital and efforts on building the product we wanted to build. Then if you have kids, there's a ton of free or very cheap services and activities from, again, when you get a kid, the giving birth process and all the healthcare related things with the babies and vaccines, that's all free. Childcare, kindergartens, they're not free, but they're accessible, they're heavily subsidized. The same with after school activities. So for all this reputation, Denmark is a very cheap place in a way to raise kids, which is good. And then the state funds a lot of content, like a la Netflix, that you can get yourself in case you, for example, want to cancel your Netflix account. DR, which is the Danish broadcaster, has a ton of content, including podcasts, videos, and you can even watch football. I mean, they streamed all the World Cup, for instance, and I'm from Argentina, so thank you for the congratulations. I just watched again a lot of the replays directly on the DR website. It was amazing. And again, you can't really find the whole matches on YouTube, but you can in DR. Irriolen, which is the opportunity to rent online books and audiobooks. They also have a lot of them in English, and it's all free. You just need to have a library account, super easy. And the Danish classes as well. I got 2 years, and everyone almost, as far as I know, everyone can get 2 years of free Danish education when you get to Denmark, which again is a great way to learn Danish and meet friends. So definitely something you could consider. Cut back on subscriptions. And for my great frustration, it looks like every single product or service is becoming a subscription. And many of us have subscriptions and memberships for things we don't use or need. So you can save a lot of money looking at this deliberately. Especially here in Denmark, that a lot of these subscriptions are the highest in the world in terms of prices when you compare prices of Spotify, Amazon, you name it. Here it's normally the number one in the world, or definitely top 10 on cost, right? So my rule of thumb when it comes to subscriptions are review your bank and credit card statements to identify any recurring charges you do have. I list down for sure in a file all the subscriptions that I have, how much it costs me per month, how much it costs me per year, what is the specific use. Again, like this is something that you should have mapped out because you don't want to have fixed cost, and everything that takes money from your pocket every single month is a fixed cost. So you can also check, for example, in your iPhone. If you have an iPhone, there's a subscription tab as well, and you can see if you have any surprises there. And once you have this list, you can evaluate whether all the subscriptions that you have are giving you enough value, and you should actually keep all the ones that you have there. If you want to cut your fixed cost, the typical things to consider are that if you have, for instance, Netflix and Disney Plus and Apple TV Plus and Amazon Prime, do you really need to have all of them? Do you need to have cable TV on top of that? If you have iCloud, do you need Google Drive and Dropbox? Same if you have Dropbox, you need all these other two as well. And if you have an Audible account, do you need Audible when you also have Irriolen that has hundreds of thousands of books as well? Something to consider as well. And one thing you can do is to put a cap or a limit on how much are you willing to pay each month on subscriptions. And that can be 300 krona, that's like your subscription budget, and then everything goes from that. And at the same time, you can say, okay, this is my limit. And hey, as I said, most of subscriptions in Denmark are the highest in the world. And that takes me to the last point, which is don't buy stuff in Denmark. So Denmark is the most expensive country in the EU for consumer goods. It's brutal. So again, we have 25% VAT or MONS on everything, and that's a killer. In this context, what I have been doing myself for many years is that if I want to buy an expensive electronic, for example, I feel it's a lot better to buy it abroad than buying it here. You can be abroad within the EU or even outside the EU. Again, technically, if you bring things that are over 3,000 krona in worth back to Denmark from abroad, you should pay VAT at customs at the airports. If you buy an iPhone and you do that every 2 years, nobody will do anything. I mean, don't count on that. I mean, it's technically illegal to do that. But again, few people go to the airport and declare the few things they buy. So next time you want to buy a camera or a phone or a computer, and you find a lot better and cheaper price abroad, that's something to consider because you would save a lot of money. This will then apply for every single good. There are certain things that there's a lot better options to buy in Denmark. For example, I always buy shoes here because of the amazing customer protections. But for certain amount of things, sometimes it's better to do abroad if you have the opportunity. And if not, something to consider as well as a side note here. Denmark has a very good market and thriving market for second-hand items. Again, not just electronics, but we're talking about a lot of kids stuff. I see myself with the 2 kids, really good market for that. Excellent value with a lot of things that you can buy via DBA on Facebook. And we have saved a lot of money as our family here buying second-hand goods that are often in a very good state. And just last, to give perspective on this point, is that looking back at subscriptions, I am from Argentina, as I said before, world champions. I pay my Spotify account from my Argentinian credit card because over there it costs me the equivalent of 20 krona per month, and it works perfectly with the, being here in Denmark as well. There are little hacks like that you can consider as well. If you have an opportunity to have an account in a Turkish bank or Argentinian bank, as I do, and have the chance to pay for something like Netflix or Spotify or YouTube Premium, you name it, and pay like 1/10 of what you do in Denmark and get a similar service, you should be fine. These companies are making a ton of money already, so it's not that they're going to be cheating any system. Now, once you have saved all this money, you're ready to take the first stage in your journey to financial independence. And for that is to start investing. And for that, you should check this video over here, where I explain the simplest way to get started with investing in Denmark while paying the lowest possible in taxes. Thanks for watching.